let's begin. Because we begin connected. We are born thoroughly connected to one another. We are wired from birth, and millions of years of evolution have fashioned us into absolutely the most social of all of the animals. And if this keeps up, and there's no indication that it's slowing down, before very long, we're going to become nearly as social as the ants and the bees. We're going to be less individuals and more colonies, a kind of organism. Now, probably every single person in the auditorium this afternoon has a mobile on them. You might have it silenced, you might have it turned off, doesn't really matter because you're still continuously connected. And that was where I left things right here on this stage at the first TEDxCanberra. And you can go online and see the video, and where I was talking about how profoundly connected we were becoming. But for me, that was actually just the start of a voyage of discovery, because we connect in order to share. Now, what we share is of almost no consequence. Strangers will talk about the weather. Friends gossip. Mothers soothe children. Lovers just like to hear the sound of one another's voices. Sharing is the performance of connecting. It's where we find all of the advantages that make us so successful. It's how we learn about food and shelter, about threats and dangers, about hates and loves. And we have always done this because if we listen, the sharing of others saves our lives. Now today, we share instantly and globally. Events of consequence ripple across the earth at the speed of light, so much so that the news of an earthquake spreads faster than the waves. Now, between the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004 and the Andaman Sea earthquake, which happened, I think, a year ago today or tomorrow, almost the same size, between those two events, almost everyone in Southeast Asia got a mobile and therefore knew to flee the shoreline before the seas rose. Now, sharing is usually casual, it's usually open-ended. But there are those moments when sharing takes a sharp turn into mutual interest. You can think about the times when there was just an aimless, friendly conversation, and it suddenly stumbled upon a topic that captivated both parties, and everything that was soft and slow becomes focused and laser-like as each of you are plumbing the depths of the other's knowledge. And in those moments, we pass over from sharing into learning, sharing with intent. Now, we've always gathered close to those who can teach us, just as those who hope to learn from us crowd in. And today, we draw upon the knowledge and the experience and the intelligence of 5 billion people. That's hyperconnected sharing, and it's transforming learning into something that is utterly unprecedented. We connect to those with mastery. We learn as they share, and we apprentice and apply ourselves in almost any field of endeavor, to almost any domain of knowledge, from the arcane to the absurd, and we can free ourselves from ignorance or multiply our stupidity in a matter of moments. Pub trivia nights, case in point, that staple of Australia, have become nearly impossible unless held beneath the ground in bunkers where the participants are strip searched for connected devices before they're allowed to play the game. Because we are too connected, we share too freely, we learn too rapidly now to allow any pockets of unknowing to persist for very long. Where there's a will to knowledge, there's now a way. All knowing is doing and all doing knowing. What we know, we have no choice but to enact. We always perform to the limits of our knowledge. Doing is learning put into practice. And it's here, specifically, that the changes wrought by a planet of hyperconnected individuals become most visible. Because we no longer act alone, but we act with the knowledge and experience and intelligence of 5 billion people, backing us up. And so we have no choice anymore but to punch far above our weight in absolutely every situation. Because when we have a problem, what do? We instinctively Google our way to a solution and draw on everything everyone else has ever said to teach us, learning that and then acting upon it. And when you multiply that across a hyper-connected planet, connecting, sharing, learning, and doing are already transforming every facet of culture, from business to education, science to government, privacy to personality. And this is the map of today. This is the completion of the voyage that began in this room on this stage 2.5 years ago. And if that were the whole of the thing, it would be enough. But past is prologue. Now that we are all connected, now that the human universe is utterly transformed, we set our sights on all we survey, the kingdom beyond connection, and we aim to bring it within. And we're already well down that path. Over the last 3 years, our mobiles have largely transformed into smartphones, which are silicon sandwiches of incredible computational complexity. Now, the smartphone exists because every generation of electronics has twice the capability, costs half as much, and consumes half as much power as the generation that came before it. These generations arrive like clockwork every 18 months, obeying the unyielding dictates of Moore's law. That solar panel costs 1/100th of what it cost 30 years ago because of Moore's law. Now, by today's standards, a first-generation smartphone of 2007, practically unusable. A device from 2019 to us would seem almost magical. But even those first smartphones cost nearly $1,000. Today, they would cost 1/16th the price, as 4 generations of Moore's law ticked away. And a low-end smartphone still packs quite a lot of power. And over the next 10 years, 5.5 billion people will be getting their own smartphone. And the price of those devices is going to drop precipitously. Connected intelligence is no longer the plaything of the wealthy. It is now spreading pervasively across the planet, and it's now at the service of everyone. And sometime this year, the cost in the components to deliver smartphone-like intelligence and that kind of connectivity will fall below the $10 point. When that happens, it makes it possible to provide affordable, connected intelligence anywhere we want in the material world. Now, 3 years ago, I left my tablet in a seat pocket on an airplane after a late-night flight. And I assumed it was gone for good until about 18 hours later, I realized that I could track it. And I found out exactly what house it was in. And I sent a little message asking for its safe return and promising a reward, no questions asked. My tablet knew where it was, and it could tell me. That same capacity is now immediately within reach for every object we value. Suitcases that never get lost in transit. business suits that never disappear at the dry cleaners, power tools that always find their way back to the shed. And that's just the beginning. Consider a toilet that analyzes your urine, which is actually great news if you're a diabetic or if you have some sort of kidney disease or even a urinary tract infection. And imagine now not just your toilet, but your refrigerator and everything else in your kitchen, which is recording each item as it enters and exits and weighing it out and figuring out how many kilojoules and how much fat and cholesterol and vitamins you've consumed, and then mailing that data off to your GP, who is mailing back to you a daily customized exercise plan so you can work off that free end. My smartphone, already in my pocket, sits there and tracks every step I take. It tells me how many I've walked through a given day, but it leaves it to me to make of that what I will. In the broadly connected world, that information is shared around because everything in my personal connected environment can use that information to improve my well-being. And so the pattern we've already identified is repeating, déjà vu all over again. We create connected devices. They share what they observe, and that sharing becomes focused on outcomes as these connected devices feed into one another, modeling a specific problem and then driving it toward a solution. Connect, share, learn, do. We did this for ourselves. Now we're teaching the material world how to ape our own behavior. And the reactivity of the material world will range from the imperceptible to the pronounced. You can imagine lights that would modulate their color, their pattern, their intensity to reflect or to drive our mood. So that after a cold, stormy winter's day, you arrive home to find just a touch of pink in the lighting. Nothing consciously notable, but just enough to lift your spirit. And that level of sensitivity is an inherent feature of this world. So that within a generation, we won't be talking about an internet of things. It's simply going to be the way things work. It's no longer going to be particularly significant. It's not really even going to be identifiable. It's just going to be a seamless and continuous experience of connected intelligence in the entire world. And so, in every moment, that connected world is watching us. It's sharing, it's learning, and it's doing what it can to meet our needs and fulfill our desires. An unconnected world has no mechanism to achieve this. The connected world is inevitably drawn into the procession of sharing and learning and doing. Now, as the material world connects, it begins to evoke an almost animist quality. It will be difficult to shake the sense that the world has come to life like some sort of Pinocchio. 15 years ago, psychologist Sherry Turkle studied 4- and 5-year-old children who had been given the then brand new Furby to play with. Was the Furby, she asked these kids, more like your pet dog or more like your toy doll? And in language that the kids could understand, what she was asking them was whether they wanted to class the Furby as animate or inanimate. And you know what the kids said? The kids said, neither. They created a new class of thing between the quick and the dead, and they situated the Furby there. And it's that space, which is the space of the golem of mythology, of the robot, of the Furby. That space is growing to encompass the entire material world. Everything we touch is being transformed by connected intelligence. It's starting with ourselves and it's radiating outward. And it's producing a new relation in which the strict boundaries between what's going on inside of me and what's going on out there in the world start to blur, because both sides are thinking, both sides are engaged, both sides are interacting, and each is learning the language and the intent of the other. We are not merely spirits in the material world. Instead, we are infusing this material world with our spirit. Thank you.